Hi everybody. Today we're going to be looking at how to draw castles. We have drawn Llandovery Castle a while back in class, but I know that some of you don't come to my classes, so it would be good to have a refresher with regard to these castles. I managed to find a really lovely picture of Llandovery Castle by Turner. So what I propose is that I show you how to draw this, and then I'm going to put it on a sort of a slow-mo video and put some music over the top of it while I use coloured pencils to fill it in. However, before you do that, it would be really good to take a copy of your drawing, because you might want to then move it on and create a watercolour. So what I thought I might do is do all three. So what I'll do is I'll do the drawing, and then I'll photograph it, and I'll save that as a separate image and print that off in black and white. And then I'll do the colour pencil image, so you can see how coloured pencils work, and then I'll do a watercolour version of this. So you'll have three different versions to work from. Okay, so first of all I just want to run through very quickly a couple of compositional tips. If you look at this picture, you can see that this is almost split into thirds, right? So this is called the rule of thirds. So if I just draw a rough rectangle, that's the outline of the A4 copy I've got here, which I will send to you. And if I put in my rules of thirds, so as we've done before, you've got 1/3, 2/3, and the same across as well, 1/3, 2/3. And if you look at Turner's image, more or less the castle is sitting on top of this top third and on this cross here, and there's a good reason for doing that. One is, if you put the castle in the middle, the eye hasn't really got anywhere to go. If you put it too low or too high, then obviously it's going to look strange. So basically his horizon line, the top of his hills are on this line here, and then the castle is here. So roughly the castle is about there, like that. The other mound is sitting more or less on the halfway line, and then you've got your river bank coming down like this. So if any of you are familiar with Llandovery Castle, it's very windy here today, and I'm sure it's very windy up at the castle. So if you hear some banging and crashing, it's just the wind playing with my tin roof. You'll know that this is actually the view from the other side of the castle. This is Llandovery here. You can see the start of the town just here. So the knight, which everybody is familiar with, which is now installed, is actually over here somewhere, around there. So normally you'd be in the car park here looking up at the castle this way, and round the back here is where the playground is and the animal market. And in the distance there you can see probably what is Llandovery. Okay, so it's actually a view that most of us don't get to see, which is from round the back. So it's quite an interesting view. So there you go with the rules of thirds. And this is Turner. And you can see this image online. It's in the Turner collection at the Tate, Britain. So on their website you can see every drawing and every painting that's ever been made by Turner. So go and have a look. The other good thing about this composition is this sort of S shape or Z shape. Some people call it S shape. Some people call it Z shape. That's if my pencil will work. Oh, maybe not. I'll just have to sort of, this is one of these propeller pencils actually, that's alright. So it sort of goes like that. So, or it can be like that, or opposite, like that. Okay, so you can see that this is following that curve. And what that does is it draws the eye up and into the composition and up to the castle, which is your main subject. So if you can ever work in a river or a path or a stream or a fence or whatever into your composition, then that makes for a really satisfying image. And he's worked in thirds here. He's got a third is the sky, a third is the main distant landscape, and then the bottom third is the foreground. So that's another good compositional tool. Okay, so the next time you see this image, I will be drawing it onto A4, and I'm going to just use a simple pencil line and just produce an outline. Okay, I'm going to do that on time lapse so that it speeds up a bit. Okay. Okay, so I have thought about the composition and I've thought about how to measure. So we're going A4 to A4, so you know you can just measure with your pencil the distances between the edge of the castle and the edge of the paper, the bottom of the paper to the top of the castle, from that edge to that edge there, from the top to the horizon. Just take very minimal measurements of the paper. And if you want to blow this up or reduce it down, then you just either double the measurements or you halve the measurements that you've taken with your pencil. The other option is to grid it up and put that on, put a grid on your paper and then just copy the elements into each square. But it's up to you really how you do that. Okay, so the next element is you can see I've just roughly sketched in those elements. And what I've done is to take a picture now with my iPhone here, my smartphone. Just take a picture of the rough outline of the drawing that you've done. You may have put more detail in than I have, but it's nice to have a copy just in case you do want to do a watercolour. Okay. And that you can then transfer to your laptop or wherever you print out your images from and make a copy, and then you can trace that so you don't have to draw it out twice onto a piece of watercolour paper. Okay, so the next stage you'll see me doing is using coloured pencils. So I've got some Faber-Castell pencils here. It's quite a large set, lots of different colours. I was given this by somebody, I can't remember who. Like most things, it's lovely to receive these presents, and you can see they're brand new. Oh, how lovely. You don't have to do your picture in coloured pencil. You could do it in pastel, you could do it in pen, it's up to you. But for this one, we're going to do it in some form of dry medium, not watercolour or paint. Okay, so there's going to be a variety of techniques that you'll see me using. As with any shading, because effectively when you're colouring your work, you are shading, you can use the side of the pencil. So if you hold your pencil on the side like that in your hand and just use the side of the pencil, you'll get a softer mark than you would do if you were using the tip. Okay, so you can gently just shade the area that you're shading in. Okay, you get a nice soft mark. Now some pencils you'll be able to smudge. This does come off a little bit. But not a great deal. So most of your blending is going to be done with your pencil. If you want a light coating like I'm doing here, I'm working on my knees here just for a bit of comfort. You can just backwards and forwards like this until you've filled in the area, and you just add more on top if you want it to be darker. With other areas, like this distant hill here, which is actually a shade of blue, I might first of all just go over that area with the blue, and then I might cross hatch. So I just went in a diagonal line from left to right there. If you change your hand position and you go in from top left to bottom right, so you're going in a diagonal line but in the opposite direction, that's called cross hatching, and you'll get a darker colour, well, a deeper tone of the colours that you're using. However, if I wanted it to darken up, then I would have to take a different shade of pencil. So again, you just work over the top of it and make it darker. And if you need to go darker again, change the direction and just put a diagonal mark in an opposite direction to the one that you just did. So that's cross hatching. Okay. The other method we might use is layering. So for example, on the castle, now my copy has come out rather green, and that's because of the printing process. I'm going to use more brown shades on the castle, and probably some things like yellow ochre, things like that. It depends really how much how many different shades you've got in your set. So for example, this yellow ochre, I would take that and I would put it over all of the castle like this. So I just basically just fill it in to begin with, just block it out, and I would do that probably with the whole picture before I started to add any more colour, and you'll see that happening as I put it on time lapse. So block out the whole castle, and then you can take darker pencils or whatever you use in pastels, and just work in layers over the top and define those areas of that castle where it's corroded, where the outer layer of whatever building material they've used has come away. And you can do that using the same directional marks that you've used previously. Like I'm doing there, I'm just working up and down and across. But like I said, if you want to deepen it, just cross hatch. You can cross hatch in different ways and you'll get different textures. Okay, you can also use sort of dash marks like this, and again work those in different directions, and that will give you different textures than the one here. It'll give you a more broken texture, which is really good for any kind of brickwork or stonework or whatever. But just play about with the marks that you're making. The more variation of marks that you have, the better. Okay. With the clouds, you wouldn't necessarily take a white and put that down. However, you can see, well, you might not be able to see, but the tone of this white is very different to the tone of the paper. So you could use a white pencil. However, what we'll be doing is using more sort of shades of greys and blues and things like that. So, you know, you're going to go in with lighter tones. And with the clouds, if you use a sort of circular motion in places, you'll get more of a cloudy feeling, which is different to that sort of diagonal mark which I used for the colour of the sky. And also Turner's work is very active, so you can see in the cloud shapes here that the brush marks that he's used are very active. So he's put the brush marks down, he's left them, he hasn't blended them in or anything like that. So leave marks of the pencil behind. You don't have to blend everything. Okay, so I think those are the only techniques. So I'll be using sort of circular motions for the clouds, just diagonal motions for things like the sky. When you come to the water, make sure that you use horizontal mark making. On here, on any kind of rough building type material, you can use cross hatching, dashes, heavy marks, light marks. You can remove stuff with a rubber, you can remove highlights and things like that. The general consensus would be to work from the background to the foreground with a coloured pencil. All right, and that's so that you can gain visually layers of landscape against one another. If you were to start with your foreground and then try and put your background in, it would get messy. Okay, so I'm going to put this on time lapse and then you can see it build up.